So what's going on, everybody?
Hey, everybody.
We're back in the podcast room.
Yes,
we
studio, and it wasn't destroyed by a hurricane.
It's a studio, yeah. Why don't you talk all fancy and be all like...
Production room.
Make sure everyone knows how redneck I am. Okay.
Okay, so...
Although you look more redneck with this little hat on. With
First off, it's awesome.
I'm
It is
100%
pretty great.
Irish, so... Wait, is that redneck or no? I don't know.
I think
What?
you're American.
Well,
Like,
I'm
United States American?
I am born in the United States. I'm saying, like,
You have
historically, my family is Irish.
I mean,
We
your
all come from
heritage,
Ireland.
by chance? You have a lineage that was Irish?
Yeah, and my DNA tests, too, show, like, 100... It's, like, 97% Irish.
That's not 100.
That's not 100.
All right, I'm sorry.
It's not 100, but today we're going to talk about purpose.
And what is the purpose of talking about purpose?
A question I've never
To
asked
find
before.
purpose.
But not a porpoise.
Not porpoise.
I know why
That's
those are
different.
here.
Yeah.
You know why porpoises are here?
Yeah. Well, for a reason, probably.
Oh, goodness.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So that's Derek,
So,
and I'm Matt. What's up? And this is Luke.
Hey.
And we're going to talk today about purpose.
Mm-hmm.
God-given purpose.
God-given purpose.
I'll let you guys
Did
go
God
first.
give us purpose? Is it one purpose for all,
Were we on purpose?
or all purposes for one? Three Musketeers. That's what.
We're stretching this out a bit. But yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. So,
purpose.
purpose, not porpoise. Welcome to the Truth Response. All right, I can pray today.
Why don't you pray?
I will pray.
Pray.
It's so weird to have the headphones off. All right. Lord, I just want to thank you for another day that we get to come together and just discuss you and well, your purpose for our lives, God, and just finding the truth in the midst of all of the crazy out there, God. It's really crazy time in the United States and in the world right now, and I just pray that you give us a little bit of clarity in the midst of that chaos. So thank you for everything you do for us and for your love, your grace, and your mercy that you teach us how to show others a little more each day. And it's in your precious and holy name I pray. Amen.
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 Coolio.
He died.
Okay.
It's true. So, purpose.
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 Now that we all have established the word.
Yes.
So how do we want to start this? Do we want to do it with what is purpose?
Yeah.
Or how do we
Yeah.
find
What is purpose? What is life? What is purpose in life? Like, obviously, there's the whole idea of purpose is, there's a reason behind something or a reason for something. But what is purpose when it comes to life? What does that mean?
Perhaps it's the validation of existence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where we have found a reason to be here. We're not an accident. It's not chaos. It's actually order, and it's by design, so that we can feel confident in how are the steps that we take on a daily basis.
Does everybody have purpose?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Short answer.
I mean, like, do you think that? Do you think that people have to find a purpose or their purpose?
Oh, I think that is one of the same thing.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Why not?
I also don't think so. I'll let
I
you
want to know
talk first.
why. I want to know why you don't
Yeah,
think
why
so.
doesn't Luke think it's the same thing?
Well, I mean, when you say their purpose, it implies a purpose specifically created for that person. When you create a purpose, it says that the person is creating a purpose of their own will. So if God has something they want someone to do in their life and someone goes off the path and becomes something else, like if you chose to be a car salesman and make that your purpose instead of leaving and going into ministry, that wouldn't be your purpose, but it could be a purpose.
I mean, a purpose can still be your purpose, so that it can be both
But when you say
and
their
or
purpose,
both and. So talking about I'll from life experience for myself. There's been things where I have thought like this is what I was supposed to do. On different occasions. At one point I thought, oh, I'm really good at cooking. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is my purpose. And then I decided I don't like cooking for the general public. So that didn't work out. Then I thought, oh, I like designing things. So I became a graphic designer, and I thought, this is my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to do. And then that didn't work out long term. Basically, I actually wasn't that at the time I had the skills for it, but the field was really weird. And
yeah.
So anyway, moved on, got into the automotive field. I have definitely found my purpose. That's what I thought. And I worked in that field for like 13 years or something like that. And I mean, honestly, for a large part of that, I thought, this is it. This is what I was meant for. I'm good at it. I understand it. I can make a living doing this. This is my purpose. And till God interrupted all of that. And then showed me what his purpose was, which I then recognized that was the purpose the whole way. I was just trying to find something else. So
See? That's what I was trying to say.
But the pursuit of purpose, the purposes we find don't necessarily invalidate. So like we find them and that's the purpose of that moment, but it may not be your ultimate purpose.
Yeah.
So
Which I guess is the distinction.
yeah. Going into what was interesting is actually that was one of the convincing things that God said to me when I was fighting him about going into ministry. As I was accepting, not accepting. I was arguing with him about it, and I was like, I don't think you're going to get, I'm not the right person for this, so forth and so on. And then he hit me over the head pretty hard twice in one day. Actually, I had, at that point in my life, I was driving an hour back and forth to work, an hour there, an hour back. And I had this app on my phone, and I would listen to sermons on it all the time. And the morning I got up, I listened to a sermon that just smacked me over the head with it. And I could feel God telling me through the sermon, you should have already been doing this. This is what you're supposed to be doing. You weren't supposed to just be part of a church. You're not supposed to just be part of the congregation. This is what you're supposed to do. And it was really amazing. And I thought about it all day at work. And then I got off work and I thought, in my own naive mind, oh, okay, I'm not going to go through that again. So instead of hooking up my phone and doing the app and listening to a sermon, I dug through my center console and I found a CD. And on that CD was a sermon. But it was like a sermon from like years prior from the church that I was a part of. And I thought, well, I'm going to listen to this. And I kid you not, the person preaching, who is a friend of mine, I consider a friend of mine, and kind of a mentor in some ways, he preached a sermon with the same verses of the Bible and a very similar message that smacked me across the head in the same way again. And I thought I was pulling the wool over God's eyes. God's like, I've been playing the long game on this, so you were meant to do this. And so, yeah. And the funny thing is that as much as I fought, I mean, I pushed against the idea of ministry for a large part of my life and then fought God when it comes to actually accepting and going into it. But then once I actually just did, it's all I want to do. And I was like, all right, well, I think maybe this is it. And even with that, sometimes comes imposter syndrome, stuff like that. But when I see God use me, I'm the tool to which he does anything, creates something better. Then I'm like, yeah, so I'm good with this purpose. This is awesome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like I have used most of my life to struggle to figure out what that purpose is for me. Which, I mean, it happens, right? Like, that's what you're talking. I thought for a long time my purpose in life was to be a firefighter, paramedic like my dad.
Yeah.
Until I was about 16. And then found out the hard way that was not what my purpose in life was. Because I was in band.
Mm.
And it was first class of the day. And we just hung out in the hallway after class waiting for, the bell to ring or whatever. And two of my buddies were wrestling around. And one had the other one in a chokehold. And when he let go of him, well, apparently he had lost consciousness.
Oh.
And he fell and cracked his head open. And I walk around the corner to this kid whose eyes are twitching, staring straight at the ceiling, and this huge puddle of blood around his head. And I was like, nope. This is not my calling. This is not my calling at all. He was fine. I mean, he came back to school later that day after he got some stitches, but
that's interesting.
Really?
Yeah. Actually, that's funny because in
head wounds bleed really bad.
I thought I was going to do something similar. My dad was a fireman, and up in Maryland, and there was a large part of my life I thought growing up. I thought, oh, I'm going to do that. That's what Dad does.
Yeah,
I'm going to do what he did.
Well, and for centuries, for most of history, that's how things worked, right? You pass that down.
There's a party that thinks, well, I'm going to do it. I already have an in, so to speak. I mean, you start to understand the business and know what that requires, and mentally I started to kind of prepare in ways here and there, and in some ways it was almost like, honestly, it was almost like my fallback. Like, well, I mean, I could look to do other things, but I could always just do this. The weird part was when I came of age, where I could go and pursue it, I no longer had that desire at all. I'd seen enough. Mm-hmm. Like growing up and being the fireman's son and waiting for him to come home and seeing my dad get hurt on calls.
I think that was the worst part about growing up as a fireman's kid is every single time they leave to go to work, you think the thought goes through your head, that could be the last time I see him.
Yeah,
like
it does happen
every time.
Yeah,
so I mean that's how I grew up. Anyway,
you try not to think about it,
well, yeah,
but it happens. And then not only that, but like my dad was fire chief at the one house, and so I saw things that nobody sees. I've heard stories that nobody hears, and the full weight of what it is, and then seeing some of the politics of some of it, and I was like, you know what, not for me. I don't think this is where I'm going. Now, ironically. After I had accepted the call to ministry, I was listening to a guy who I was visiting a church, and they had brought in a visiting person to preach that day, and he just so happened to be a guy that used to be Muslim, and his ministry was in an area that if he's caught doing Christian ministry, he's going to die. And so he's in the trenches, like the trenches of the trenches, and I thought, this is amazing. And he described ministry like a fireman. He said, we're just the ones that are saved from the fire running back in to save someone else. And I thought, wow, that's good. And I called my dad, and I was like, I was a fireman after all. Check that out. But, yeah, I mean, it's wild.
My dad would always say things to me whenever, because I pursued ministry for a little bit. Also, don't think that the ministry I pursued is my calling either, but we'll get there in a second. But my dad always used to be like, I just save lives. You save souls. And he didn't mean I was the one saving souls, but that was where I was working. That was where my focus was. That's where my passion was. And, of course, then he had to one-up me and start leading all of the missions of the church I go to. So, anyways, just a little inside joke between me and my dad. But after I found out, like, okay, firefighting and EMT and paramedic and all that. That's not my gig. I felt a call to ministry to do youth, and I did a little bit of it. Had a really rough experience.
You would be a fun youth pastor.
To pick on. Most people have to add that on there because that's what happened. So, when I was here, but so I worked at a job at a church. I mean, and for a while as an interim, as they were looking for somebody, and they pretty bluntly told me that I would never be the guy because I didn't have any seminary, even though I went to Bible college. So, old school Baptist church, Southern Baptist church, that I grew up in, quite literally grew up in that church, and they basically groomed me to do it, and then rejected me outright. So that was my first real big rejection. Let me go out of nowhere, which was fun. They decided that it was best for me to just, because I was driving in an hour and a half to go to work and all that, which down here, most people are like, an hour and a half, that's normal, but there it's not. So they were just like, you go do church with your wife. It's like, okay. It's a blessing in disguise, right? But then I did ministry here at this church, and that was kind of a mess. It was just like, I don't know. The youth are so different today. I don't relate to them at all.
Hey, neither do I. It's okay.
But I do feel called to adults more than I have ever now, and adults that are already in the church, kind of specifically. But so I don't know. I don't really know what my purpose is though. Like I mean, doing whatever God tells me to do next. That's what I get up in the morning for. And,
there you go.
And so
sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. But
so I think ultimately when it comes to purpose, we need to, as Christians, one of our things that we should be looking to do is be, I might have said this before, but we need to be fat. F-A-T. Faithful, available, and teachable. That way, no matter what God points us to, we can do what we need to do. Faithful, available, and teachable. I have a buddy up north in Maryland. He has a business that he called Fat under that, because that's something that we talked about all the time. He didn't do it because we talked about it. He did it because he loved it. So it has nothing to do with me. So I want to make sure I don't try to put myself in a disclaimer.
Not sponsored.
Yeah, not me. But no, I thought that was awesome. He is a good dude. Anyway, so Justin, if you ever hear this, love you, man. That being said, when it comes to life purpose for anyone, I think our purpose is to, discover God and then, follow God. I think that's pretty much as basic as it gets.
I've talked about the Matthew 7, 21 through 23 quite a few times on here, and I'm sure you guys have got it memorized by now. But it's the whole passage where it says, not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father who is in heaven. And many will say to me that day, Lord, Lord, we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name done many wonderful works. And I will profess unto them, depart from me, I never knew you. I see that not as a verse we should be scared about, but rather a verse that gives us a purpose, and that is to be known by Jesus.
Motivation.
Not just know Jesus, but be known by Jesus.
Yeah.
Like that is truly what our purpose should be.
Yeah.
And just being known by him, right?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I liked when this was thrown out as an idea for a subject. The reason I wanted to do it is because I think my man Luke here is primed for this discussion. Now, he hasn't been talking much in the podcast, but he has been talking a lot. And so I would invite you. So you have been in a place seeking purpose in the Lord, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about that?
don't be scared.
How does one talk about that? I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, so, and I keep freaking out because I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I keep having lengthy discussions with people bi-weekly because I don't know what to do. And, I mean, just to put it simply, I don't really know. And I keep getting told to be patient, so I'm going to be patient and try and seek wisdom. Proverbs 4:7. So I don't really know what I'm doing yet, but I'm going to, like you said, be faithful, be available, be
Teachable.
Because I really can't say what my purpose is. I can't say what I think it is because I realize what I think isn't really the right thing yet. So
You're 17 now?
I'm 17 now, yes.
Yeah, so I don't get me wrong. I think your sense of urgency is awesome. However,
It's not awesome when it becomes problematic.
Well, I think the problematic part is that when we get kind of impatient, we start trying to force, I think I said this to you, square pegs into round holes.
Yes.
And what is this? This has got to be it. Let's try this.
If I could make any square peg fit into a round hole right now, I would.
You'd run with it.
I would be so happy to do it.
The other way around does work, unfortunately.
Yes, but
yeah, it does.
I was tempted to say that on the phone, but it seemed like a pretty serious
Yeah.
subject, so I didn't.
Don't switch it around. So I will say that I've been in that place a few times where I like to. At one point, I called it the wilderness. Okay, where. Yeah. I felt like God had fully prepared me, but I had no idea what he was preparing me for. So I was just in the wilderness, just being prepared. And
not like the wilderness like Moses and the Israelites, but more wilderness like Abraham, because Abraham, the reason he was in the wilderness is because God said, get up and go. He didn't say necessarily, this is what you're going to necessarily be doing.
Yeah.
He was like, get up and this is just the direction you're going to head.
It was like a mixture of Abraham and Jesus, really, because you had the unknown. Like, Jesus knew, so that's not the part. But, like, you had the unknown of Abraham with the, okay, something's going to happen because of this, of that I could feel that you get kind of like of Jesus. And so it's like, okay, so what is it? And I was constantly just, okay, I'm just ready. I guess I should keep getting ready. And so I can relate to you a lot in that, because I spent a lot of time just, okay, well, I'll just keep reading. I'll just keep studying. I'll just keep doing this. And I'll just keep talking to people. And then you tell me when time comes, you tell me this is what to do. And so that was the one I had a wilderness. And I didn't think of it as the wilderness until a friend of mine, Liz, not Lizzie, but another Liz, from up north, she looked at me. We were in seminary together, and she's like, that's what you're doing. You're in the wilderness right now. Because she could see, I wear my stuff on my sleeve a lot, so it wasn't just her. Like, my cohort could see.
Not your face, but maybe
my
your
face,
sleeve.
but my sleeve.
Yeah.
But that I was just constantly struggling with this. Like, what is it then? I had my conviction that I'm called, but at that point was strong. Yeah. But I had no idea what it was, too.
When I was on the phone with you and I told you, I said, I'm trying, and I'm like, but I don't know what it's for. I don't know, what the end goal is, what I'm supposed to do. And I remember you paused for a second and you said, like, Luke, that's called faith. And I almost fell over. I was so taken aback by that answer. And I was, wow. I don't know what to say. And, that's what we got to have. And I remember, if I'm going through some kind of valley, it's not just like for funsies. It's for some sort of reason, right?
Well, oftentimes, sometimes it's for God's purpose, and sometimes we go through things because we play stupid games and we win stupid prizes. But, and so that's on us. I mean, that's just the reality.
For sure.
I mean, I've prayed for, like in the past, I've prayed for a sign for a purpose. And if I haven't gotten it, then that means that I'm in the place I am right now for a reason. I haven't gotten the thing for a reason.
Well, maybe. So
maybe.
Perhaps, though, impatience plays a big part in this. We have a tendency to try to dictate how God relates to us instead of how we relate to God.
It's unfortunate.
So, especially when we ask for signs. Actually, I think
I've stopped asking for signs because I used to a lot when I first came into Christianity. I was like, all right, God, I'm like, give me a big blinking sign to tell me what to do. And then I actually started like reading the Bible and stuff, and I was like, oh, never mind.
Talking about signs. So, like, I don't don't ever stop asking for signs. Signs is great.
Well,
Because you start noticing the way that God shows you things in a different light. And here's why. So, like, we went to the leadership retreat this last year in March. Was it March? I think it was March.
It was actually the very end of February.
End of February, okay. And we were splitting up, and we were all supposed to take some time to pray and just seek God. And almost everybody else, I think, left the conference room, and I stayed in the conference room. And I asked God to show me signs. And I complained a little bit because I'm like, you seem to show everybody else signs, right? Like, you show all these other people signs, but you never show me signs. And when everybody got together, everybody started talking about, like, what God was talking to them about. And it was, like, quite literally, like, showing me signs through listening to everybody else. And it was incredible. But you start shifting how you hear God.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, I encourage you not to stop asking for signs.
Yeah.
I mean, just start looking for them wherever God might put them instead of inside of a box that we try to create. Does that make sense?
I do pray. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I understand that. I will say that I almost every single day, usually at least, I pray 3 times a day, like mandatory. I make myself do it. So, at the minimum, I should say.
Sure.
But I pray for guidance a lot, like guidance. I don't necessarily say, show me a sign, because I try not to demand things from God, because that's generally bad practice. I try not to say, show me a sign, or like, make this happen so that I know that this is the case. But
Yeah, don't dictate the sign.
I don't. Yeah, that's
Don't dictate.
You
the
know
sign.
what, though?
Unless there's certain circumstances, I would say.
There are, but the thing is sometimes I throw out stupid ideas, and I think they're stupid ideas, and God does them, and I'm like, that's what you chose. So, for instance, no, I'm not kidding. There was one of the reasons I started looking at Florida was because I threw out a stupid idea out, and God answered. So I
remember this story.
Oh yeah. So I felt like God was pointing at Florida, and I was like, all right, cool. I mean, is this you or is this me? Because I love Florida. So I mean, if it's just me, I'll put a pin in it. We'll leave it alone. But I need you to make it clear. If this is you, please make it clear.
I love this story.
And of all things, I told him, I said, well, I was getting ready to go see Jesus Revolution was in the movie theater, like it just came out, and Sadie and I were going to go see it, and on a throwaway statement. Right? I said, you could put it in the movie. Okay? And I thought it was a throwaway statement because I thought that's stupid. Because, no, I'm serious. Because
No,
I knew that the
I know you're serious.
Jesus Revolution movie was about the Jesus movement that what happened in California. So
Right.
I thought, that's a dumb thing to say. But I'm watching the movie, and there's a scene where one of the characters is leaving, and they ask him where he's going to go. And he says, Florida. And I felt a shiver in my body, and I look over at my wife, and she's staring at me, like, did you hear what that just happened? And I thought, that's really specific.
And the thing is, too, like, we watched the movie at movie night. That's not like a specific plot detail that's important later on. They just say it in that one scene. And he told me I was thinking that was weird, and then after the movie, he tells me that story, and I'm like, whoa. Like,
yeah,
that's
they definitely could have made the movie without that detail. It would have been fine. But the thing is... But it happened, and the funny thing is, and I'm not really an emotional creature. Like, I don't get, I don't feel the need to burst into tears for random things. But we were leaving the movie theater, and my wife said something I felt like God was all over me. And I wanted to talk to Sadie about it, and she looked at me, she's like, can you believe that was in the movie? And I was trying to get out of my mouth, I prayed for this. And I almost was weeping. My eyes, I could feel all of the tears in my eyes. I was almost shaking. It was such an emotional experience. And I was like, to me, in that moment, people can say what they want, but I was like, this is God. This is God answering in a way that I thought it was a throwaway sentence. it wasn't for him. He's like, oh, I've been planning for this. I knew you were going to ask this question. Like, it was all there. Like, it was amazing. Amazing. So you never know. And I told you on one of our conversations, you get better at it. The longer you live a life of faith and you continue to focus on the things that God does in the world, and you start to learn how to understand him through the different things that he's doing. Sometimes you might even hear his voice directly. But you'll start to understand how to listen to him in ways that you've never learned before. And then suddenly you're not just looking at what God's done in the rearview mirror, you're seeing it as it's happening, and it's awesome.
Yeah. I actually, I don't want to talk too much about it because it was kind of a rough day, but I did hear God's voice once, like one time.
Really?
Not like sound. It wasn't like something I heard around me. I heard it in here. That was a thought that I did not think, that did not come from my subconscious. Okay. And it was all of a sudden, because I was in a really bad spot and I was praying, and I heard, like, in my head a thought that was not mine, was not in, my little, like, thought voice. I'm sure everyone has one of those,
What
right?
did it sound like?
Not everybody, but yes, most people.
It sounded like, the best way to, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like, it wasn't booming, but it was loud, and it wasn't angry or, like, dramatic. It was calm. And it just said, it was loud so that it stopped everything I was thinking. It was like a man.
Compassionate yet straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just said it's okay. That's what it said. And I was like, whoa. I didn't know how to feel after that. So I said, so I was like, so what do I do? And then I heard the same voice. It said, go. And there was something I was putting off, something I didn't want to do that I knew I was supposed to do. And I heard that voice say that, and then I was like, okay, all right. So I went and did it. And then I didn't hear the voice again after that. I still haven't heard it again. And it's really hard to tell people that, like, that's an experience I had, because some people look at me weird.
To those who've never experienced anything like that, it sounds, as someone would imagine it sounds kind of, all right, is that real, or are you Looney Tunes? And then for those who have experienced stuff like it, it's like, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife has experienced that, and I've experienced that. And when we talked...
Your wife experiencing that's a weird thing, though, isn't it?
Why?
Because doesn't she, like, think in a different way? Like, she's got the weird way of thinking, like the pictures and words.
Just called your wife weird.
No, so she can't. No. What he's talking about is, so I'm very visual, and I can see things, like, if you ask me.
Oh, but she can't.
She can't see images in her mind, but I can. There's actually a larger percentage of people that can actually visualize things in their mind than there is that can't, and she's one of the few that cannot visualize things. She knows what things look like. I get that mixed
up with, there's people who like hear things and like hear their thoughts, and other people who see their thoughts.
I get that mixed up with. So I hear my thoughts.
Yeah, I do too. But no, she heard God speak to her, and we compared one day. I was like, okay, so what did it sound like? And basically, we would describe it as it's a very compassionate voice, but it's a direct, and it's weird because it's like a loving, this is how it is. And it's calm. It's not bothered by it. It's just there, and it's wild. The first time I heard it threw me off too. And it was at a time where in my life I knew a guy who was a mentor of mine, and he talked about God talking to him all the time. And honestly, it made me yearn for that so badly. I would
love to wake up and be like, hey, God, what do I do right now? And I would be like, all right, go and do this. And I would be like,
he couldn't
all
even
right.
do it that quite like that. But God spoke to him
I know what
often.
you mean,
and I was like, man, I want that so bad. I want to hear God's voice. And then one day I was kind of complaining to him and questioning. And he spoke to me, and it blew my mind. And then there's been many other times since then, actually, where he said something and I heard him clear as a bell. The most alarming was when he told me my daughter was coming. That was wild. That was the longest conversation when it comes to like back and forths. that was just like, because I was asking, I do this thing every year. At the end of the year, I'll ask for what my word of the year is for the next year. So the idea is that I want him to give me something that kind of summarizes in one word what my year is going to withhold inside of it or whatever. And he's given me many, and that have had amazing purpose and meaning in ways that would take too long to go into in today.
What's your one for this year again? Remind me.
It was move.
Oh, interesting.
The aspects of that have been incredible. Not just, I thought it was funny. It's like, yeah, of course, I'm moving to Florida. He's like, no. Okay.
Yeah.
But no, the one year I was like listening for my word, and it was faith. And I was like, faith. All right. And so I said to him, so does that mean you're going to test me this year? And I kid you not, he's like, well, yeah, but your daughter's going to be born this year and her name is Faith. And I was like, what? No. But sure enough, just as he said it was going to happen, it happened. And well, because he's God and I'm not. And because so a couple weeks went by and then we found out we were pregnant, and then I had to spill the beans to Sadie, like the whole thing. But once she got pregnant, I was like, well, then it's got to be, if that part's true, then it's all true. And so, I was like, well, it's a girl and her name's Faith. And Faith has been told this story more or less. But yeah, it was wild. I remember with the day we went for the body scan to where you can, now they have different tests. I don't know how they do it now. I hear that you can get it much faster, but we would go for a body scan to see if it's boy or girl. And I was like, it's going to be a girl. You don't need to, God's already said it's going to happen. And people were making fun of me. They were like, hey, you want to predict some more babies? I'm like, no, God told me this one. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, and there's this moment right before you see something come to fruition like that, where there's just a hint of doubt in you. Where there's a moment of like, did I really hear it? And then right up, and they put it was wild. They had a TV screen that they were projecting it onto, and there it was. She was a girl. And I was like, see? And the weird thing is I was so elated that I heard him correctly. That, and you can ask my wife, this is completely true. I couldn't keep my feet on the ground. Like, we went walking out of the doctor's office and I'm skipping. I'm trying to like hold her hand and I'm skipping. I'm like, it's not really my character to do that, but I did it. Like, it was like, all right. It was overjoyed. But
so,
yeah.
So all of this to say that we all have an ultimate purpose.
Yeah. We
do have purposes that come and go, like a purpose for a time such as this, right? Mm-hmm. But the way that we figure that out, how do we find out what our purpose is by doing exactly what you were talking about doing, and listening for that voice, and being willing to be fat.
Yeah.
And not my kind of fat, but the Bible kind of fat. But it's all of that. That's the how. And
yeah.
Just because you don't have this is my life purpose for the whole entirety of my life, does not mean that you're not succeeding, and it doesn't mean that you're not doing what God's will is, and it doesn't mean that there's not a purpose that you're fulfilling now. And in fact, what I've found a lot of times is I end up fulfilling some purpose that I didn't know that I had until in the middle of having that purpose that I'm fulfilling, and I'm like, oh man, I'm doing it. Like,
yeah.
I just didn't realize that this is what it was, Yeah. And so as far as anybody out there that's thinking like, well, that didn't help this whole conversations, but it does. That's what the whole thing is seeking him, right?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I think our ultimate purpose is to seek a relationship
Seek
with
first
Jesus.
the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you.
Exactly. So, yeah, work on your relationship with him first and foremost before anything, and the rest of it kind of falls into place. And maybe for anyone listening or watching, maybe it'll be something where Jesus will audibly say something to you. Maybe he will just lead you there by other means, but you'll find yourself where you need to be, and it'll be amazing.
As long as you're willing.
You got to be willing. But that's part of relationship with Jesus.
Well, and look at Joseph, right?
Yeah.
Wait,
which Joseph?
The one that had the dream and the coat and the.
There was two that had dreams, by the way. Well, go ahead.
Well, okay, yeah, technically.
Yeah.
But
but the coat, okay.
The Joseph, way back in the day, Old Testament Joseph. He was given visions. And he was given the signs and and he got excited and he told people that it applied to. And they got mad. Yeah. And they got so mad that they threw him in a well, sold him into slavery after being convinced not to kill him.
Yeah.
And then he poured into God. He sought God the whole time. And in the midst of being in slavery or whatever, he got sold to a guy who just so happened to be in charge of prison, and he rose in the ranks of his household and then got accused trying to commit adultery with the guy's wife. And goes to jail. And the whole time he's, trying to seek God. He's not doing any of these things wrong. He's just being thrown into this mess, right? And this is over the course of, I believe it was 30-ish years. I believe is what the mathed out to be, somewhere in there. And so then he thinks, there's these two people got put in jail and they had these dreams and now they're asking me, I can help them out with this, and then they forget about him after all this stuff even comes true. And then
the one guy had an excuse to forget about him. He was dead.
Well, that's true. That's fair. That's fair. But then finally, it comes time to actually fulfill his purpose, right? It took 30 years of him seeking God in every situation that he was in.
It's easy when I'm reading the Bible to forget that this happens over the period of a long time.
Right.
Because you said 30 years, and I was like, okay, in my head it was 4. Max.
Yeah. No.
But no, it was 30
No, it was
years.
a long time.
It was a long time.
It was.
And he's not the only one. I mean, the amount of time for Moses was way longer than people realize. Actually, even think about this. Look at our Messiah. We have his birth. We've got one scene a little later, and then we've got nothing till his 30s. It's.
But think about Joshua. So you got Joshua, who was one of the original spies of the land, right? Came back, and him and Caleb were the only two that were like, yeah, we got this. God's got our back. And then all the other ones were like, nope, this is crazy. We would have been better off in Egypt. Then 40 years happens. Okay, so in order to have been one of those spies, even on the young end, he would have had to have been at least 20.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Because he would have had to have been part of that army fighting men age, right? And I didn't put 2 and 2 together until I was listening through it this last time around. So, he would have had to have been at least 20. Then they spend 40 years in the desert. He's 60.
Yeah.
Before he hits his purpose. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's a good lesson because, a lot of people get... it's easy to get impatient trying to find what I'm supposed to do next, but people get impatient where God's got them planted. Do the best you can while you're planted. You never know what God can use you to do, even in a place where you feel like this isn't my ultimate purpose.
Can I chip in real quick?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. But at our men's group here, Men Arise, we were talking about the pillars of manhood and stuff like that. And Lathan, not Lathan who's been on the podcast, but Lathan's dad, which does not get confusing. Anyways, he was he was talking about this video, where it's like about this guy who starts like lifting it. I'll summarize it really quick. He's like lifting up this kettlebell, right? And they just show it, and he's doing it over like the course of years, and then they show him at the end like doing this, like lifting up his daughter so she can put a star on a Christmas tree or something like that, right? That was the really quick version of that story. And he said, well, that was his why. That was his reason for working really hard. And I asked him, I'm like, so what's mine? How do I find out mine? And I asked him basically for 15 minutes all the different variations of how do I know, like, what my motivation is? How do I know what I'm working towards? And he said something along the lines of, like, you might not even know until you're 40 years old. And I looked at him just like this.
Like, how dare you say that to me?
Because every time I've had these kind of conversations about purpose and like struggling to find what I'm meant to do with you or Cove or Derek or Nick, it always ends with be patient. You're 17, you're too young, and that's an answer I really don't like to hear.
Well, it's not that you're too young. No, don't hear that because that's not true. Paul tells Timothy, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young. It's not because you're young. But patience is a thing that is super hard for anybody this day and age, right? We are a TV dinner society.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you pop it in, it's instantly ready for you, Yeah. And so we've lost a lot of that. Be patient. Things happen over time. Like, live in the right now in preparation for tomorrow, remembering what has been. Like, but live for right now. Like, live here. Yeah. Because you're not promised tomorrow. It's your plans. And God says this about plans of man, that's...
People make plans and God laughs.
Right?
Yeah.
It's true. So...
He's like, that's adorable.
Plus, not only that, but, like, don't be so caught up in what's going to happen tomorrow, because what God's got is so much better than what you can even imagine. So just live in it.
Told me, I was on a phone call with him a little bit back, and he told me that if I really wanted to kind of get my ground for like what I'm going to do, who I'm going to be, he told me to start trying to read the Sermon on the Mount daily. I'll be honest, I didn't do it for like 3 weeks, but I started doing it like a couple days ago, where I've started reading it every day, and it's already given me a lot to think about. The big thing, of course, is building it on the rock. But Jesus also says, do not worry about tomorrow. Don't be anxious about what hasn't happened yet. He says, the birds of the field, God takes care of them. Are you not more important than those birds? Of course, that's a very rough...
It works just fine, dude.
Yeah.
That's the point.
But I was really... What you said is definitely true, because, man, I love to worry about tomorrow. I love to sit there and agonize over what I'm going to do next, who I'm going to be next, and I have to be, as much as I don't like to admit it, I have to be patient, and that's something I'm going to learn. And
it's hard to be where you're planted sometimes.
It is hard.
When I was...
doesn't mean I...
Yeah,
sorry.
That's okay.
Continue.
When I was in automotive... I used to love it when I started to call it when my two jobs came together. Mm-hmm. I also called them God moments, where I'm working at a car dealership in the service department as a senior advisor, and that's not exactly the place that you talk religion or faith or the Bible.
Yeah.
But I found ways to do so through any excuse that I could find. I would pay attention to, that car's got a Jesus fish, or cross hanging from the rearview mirror, or I'd have my Bible out at my desk and wait for someone to make a comment about it.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. The first time I realized I could do this is actually I had a cup, and the cup had the church I was currently with, their logo on it, and somebody saw it, was like, I go to that church. And I was like, awesome. So we started talking. And then I was like, I want more of that. Because in the moments of dreariness of where I was, that was the light that kept me going. And I was like, I can get that while I'm here. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, you never know. God can work in some of the darkest places that we can imagine. because he's God. He's got full power and authority over everything. And we tend to try to put him in a box, and we try to give him the rules.
I've never done that.
And,
No, I say that because at Move, he said that exact same thing to me because of, well, the details aren't important, but I just remembered him saying that.
I may have said it before. So, but yeah, I mean, it's wild, trying to find, like, we sometimes lose track of the fact that our purpose in the now is not less of a purpose because we're not where we think that our purpose is going.
Or that it's not quote unquote grand, right? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be this huge thing.
Yeah. Or if you are doing any kind of ministry, anything, to think that your ministry is somehow less than another ministry. I learned that. I learned, like,
it's called the body of Christ.
Yeah,
there's no part that is more important.
Sometimes it's the small things that have a bigger impact than the big things.
Yeah.
That is something that I'm going to have to understand a little bit better, I think. Like, think a little bit more about it. Because, man, I perceive myself as incredibly insignificant in comparison to all the things that happen. Like, I know that's not true, but it's kind of like, I guess you could say, like, kind of a hard belief I've had for a long time that, like, I'm really not that big of a deal. I'm really not that important to God or to, the world around me, and that I need to figure out how to be important, how to do the things that matter, and that's...
I was watching The Chosen season 4. Right.
I'm not there yet.
And so there's a part in which that it just highlights, stuff that happens in the Bible, but where they start talking, they ask the brothers,
Thunder Brothers.
Yep.
Yeah.
James and John.
Thank you. Man, my brain is just not there. They ask Jesus, can we sit on your right and your left? And he's like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And it just shows him like in this way that's like, how could you ask for something like that? Like, what, do you not understand what is happening here? Like, do you not understand what this whole thing is? And so, like, it's not about prestige or position or or an amount of something. Like, you are designed in a way that you are an important cog in the machine because you are a part of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
That at that simple, most basic level, like, if you're hurting, we are hurting. If you're rejoicing, we're rejoicing. That's what Scripture says. And so, like,
so true.
Every single part of the body.
Yeah, and there might be people like yourself that listen to this or watch this, and so I'll say the same thing to them as I'm going to say to you. You are incredibly important to God. So important that He created you. So important that He planned for you to be here. So important that He took nails through His wrists and His hands. So important that He rose so that we knew that we had hope. So important that He promises to come back. So important that He gave you a whole family of church people that you can come to. Every single person is so incredibly important to God. He didn't need any of us. He decided that we needed to be. And He has taken that seriously from day one. You are so incredibly important. And it might not feel that way sometimes when the world's beating you down, or when we have no direction, or when stuff just happens, man. And when we're hurting, it does not mean that He does not love you any less, or He loves you any less. He loves you just as much. You're just as important. You still have just as much purpose to His plan for your life. It's It's always going to be there. And the hard part is trying to navigate that sometimes. But like I said to you on the phone, that's where faith comes in. To know that who's on the throne, to know who loves us, to know who gives us identity above any identity, because it's him.
You know what makes hard times miserable? Trying to do it outside of God.
Oh, absolutely.
That's it. I mean, seriously, though, that is the difference. Like, if you are walking with God and through the same situation as you may not be walking with, if you are walking with God in a rough situation, it is night and day different than going through that same situation without him. It doesn't matter what you run into. And that's the reason for the valleys. In my opinion, you get to see, instead of making a mountain out of molehill, right? Have you heard that? You know, like where like it's this big thing when it's this big. The reason we go through valleys is so that whenever we're on the mountaintop, when we're actually doing really good, and there's a little divot in the road, we realize that it's just a divot in the road.
Yeah.
That it's not a valley. And then when we're in the valleys, we learn that trusting and relying on him is what then carries us up the mountain on the other side. Like, there is hope for it to be a valley and not just end in plains.
Yeah. And makes me think, too, because it's something I haven't really thought too much about. But I realized, I know we talked about this before, but after the move trip was a really big deal for me, and it was a really big deal for everyone else. And then we got back, and I think I kept trying to make mountains out of molehills, like you said. And then eventually I just found myself in the valley. And sometimes I almost feel a little bit of disdain for, like, myself in that mountaintop because I wasn't aware of, like, you know, I felt like I wasn't prepared for, like, what was going to happen afterwards, you know? And so that's another thing that I think I need to work on, too, is, like, being less critical of my past self because I know it's pointless. It really doesn't accomplish anything. But
look at your past self in a positive light, though. You can be critical, but look at it to not hate on yourself, but rather, okay, how can I apply this to going forward and living in the right now? Like, you should always enjoy a mountaintop.
Yeah, I found it hard to enjoy just in general, like, things since move, because I worry that if I have another top experience, I'm not going to be prepared to crash way down, if that makes sense.
I feel like we need a topic on worry.
We just
episode on worry?
We kind of did one like that, didn't we?
I don't know.
We might have done something. So the thing is you will be more prepared.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I know God's going to prepare me
for
what I need to be prepared for.
We got Move coming up next summer.
Oh.
And, yeah. So we're going. You're going.
I know.
But
if I don't go, people are going to protest.
Don't wait for Move for a mountaintop.
But the point is that the one thing I tried to express to you the most was, like, look, mountaintop experiences like that are awesome. They are. And the difference is that I had learned how to get there and how to come back down the hill. You wanted to stay on the mountain.
I liked the view. Yeah.
Trust me, everyone loves the view. And it's great, especially because it really fills you up. But faith is not lived on the mountaintops. It's lived in the valleys.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to do anything between now and Move...
Job.
Huh?
Like you said, faith is in the valleys, not on the mountain. Job, the story of Job.
That's true.
That's what that is.
But if you were to do nothing else but learn how to live a life of faith in the valleys until next Move, that's admirable. Because then you'll be better prepared to get back up there, fill yourself back up, and then bring it back down.
But don't seek it.
No. Don't seek
valleys.
No, it's not about seeking valleys. It's about just being, in where you're at and learning to be faithful without that great moment where
Live with
everything's
Jesus
spiritual. I mean, you're talking about taking a
today.
group of high schoolers or adults to like a week where you're just saturated in God, and He's there in the midst, and people are making it's incredible. And then you try to back away from that, and you have to go back into life where you're not saturated in God, and the problems of life come, and the loneliness of life's come. Like that's where it's like I can understand switching that gear. Nobody wants to,
Yeah.
but that's where we got to learn. We got to learn how to do that.
It's more work then. It's not that the coming down into the valley after something like that is a choice. It's a choice to be, barring an outside event that causes you to go into a valley, right? It's a choice because in that week, it's easier because you've separated yourself. When you go back, it becomes work to stay on that mountaintop. You can stay there. You guys coming back from move, you guys could create Bible studies throughout the week. You guys could be messaging and calling each other daily with encouragement in the Word. You guys could be, putting together playlists to be listening to, worship songs together.
I did try and get some people
all
on
of
board
that.
with that. My
It's a lot of
enthusiasm
work.
was not,
It's all about how much work you're willing to put in.
yeah.
And that's why the mountaintop ends so quickly after you come back, is because people aren't willing to put in the work whenever they get back.
Well, there's also a
keep it up there.
practicality of it all.
I mean, to be fair,
high schoolers have high school.
I was gonna say,
I know.
I do get what you're saying too.
But John the Baptist had
And-
people trying to kill him his whole life. I mean, come on. And he was still living it, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, but still, when it's not there, you just got to learn how to be okay when it's not a mountaintop, man.
It's
I
not
love the
easy.
mountaintops.
what I'm trying to say is that it's not
it's
easy.
not.
It's not
It's
a
not.
simple thing, and it is work.
I hope that
Especially purpose. Purpose is work.
I hope I can be in the valley long enough to learn what it means to be on a mountaintop properly. Like you said, learn how to get back up and back down. Because I feel like if I had another mountaintop experience right now, I would not know what to do with it or how to handle it. Which is granted probably why I haven't had one. So I don't know. I got a lot to think about.
I'll give you a story
Okay.
that one of my mentors told me.
Okay.
And this is true. So he wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to see him.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's what he was fervently praying for.
Yeah.
Just, I want to see you. He thought, that would just be what he needed. Talk about the ultimate mountaintop experience, to see Christ. And so he prayed for it again and again and again, and it just wasn't happening. And then one day, he went into a bedroom, and it was dark, and he got down on his knees, and he's praying at this bed, Lord, let me see you. Reveal yourself to me. And he became aware of a presence around him. And so he went to open his eyes, and as he opened his eyes, a cat jumped right in front of his face. And he jumped out of his skin. And Jesus says, if you can't handle that, you definitely can't handle me. Like, we don't know what we ask.
Yeah.
We think we want some things. We have to learn how to be calm and patient. One day we will all see Jesus. One day we will all bow before him. We will give accounts. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
For those of us who are in the book of life, it'll be great. But, we got to learn how to get there.
Yeah, and that's something you told me on the phone too. That I was getting decision paralysis because, I wanted to do the right thing and I did not want to do the wrong thing anymore. And then it came to a point where I wouldn't even know what to do daily or what even to pray for sometimes because I feel like I could ask for the wrong thing. So.
Yeah, you forget sometimes to live your life.
Imagine I couldn't do that.
We don't know what to do, so I just stopped living my life. That's not exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
our purpose is not outside of our personality in our life.
No.
Oh, I thought it would be Longer, actually. Felt like a long discussion.
It was kind of a long discussion.
You said you wanted to do like wording next week.
I don't know.
I
We'll
feel
see.
like I have more that
We'll
we
see.
can talk about.
We'll see. We may do business.
Yeah,
next
your
week.
podcast, your rules.
We'll
I'm
see.
not committing to anything on the episode.
We've got
currently.
Speaking of which, right? We have some ideas for some podcasts coming up, and we think they're going to be awesome. But that does not mean that we are done hearing from you. So we want you to put your stuff out there. What do you want us to talk about? We love doing that more because we know that it's impacting you directly. So, if you're like, hey, have you guys ever talked about this? Throw it out there. Or I'd really like to have answers to this, or whatever it is. Throw it out there. Get into our comments, whether it's the YouTube videos, you can comment on that all day long, or on the Instagrams or whatever it is. Facebook, message us. Throw your ideas out. We want to hear them. We want to talk about them. We want you to have at least some kind of answer to your questions.
There's also currently a form on Facebook that you can go to that goes to a drive that drops comments, or not comments, topic ideas into a nice little spreadsheet for us. So if you're commenting on Facebook or are on our Facebook and are watching this, go check that out. And it doesn't matter the topic. Just give us topics. We are willing to attack anything.
We've had to
may need a little bit of lead time,
because
but
you guys won't give us topics.
Especially if it's a topic that Matt's not excited to
But we're in the works of getting Patreon. It's coming. It is coming.
Yeah.
It's coming soon, actually. We've got some ideas and some thoughts on getting some people, remote guests on here.
Awesome.
And your help through Patreon can make that happen even better
and
and
faster.
easier and
I
faster.
cannot afford to fly people in, contrary to popular opinion.
Exactly.
Derek's opinion.
I think you should be able to do it, but whatever.
I do. My job starts this Saturday, so first paycheck I'll get like $100.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Definitely can. How much is a plane ticket? From
Depends
like
on where it's
LA
coming from.
to
It's completely
here.
depends on where it's coming from.
Okay.
So, anyways, so
Yeah.
like, subscribe, comment, share, please share.
Share all over the place.
And share Jesus' love with others too.
Yeah.
You don't have to just share our podcast, but sharing our podcast is one way that you can help them see clarity in the midst of the chaotic world that we live in today.
We are the salt of the
I
earth.
love that little,
It's just a boom. Yeah, it's just a
little advertisement there. So, like, subscribe, hit the bell, comment, share, do all the things are there for you to do.
If you have any life advice for me in the comments, I'd appreciate it.
There you go.
That is always
Give him some life advice.
There was that one, I don't remember
That
who
we
it was,
will
but
then
someone
filter.
commented something that one time. You
Oh, yeah.
said that to me. I really
sent something
appreciated that.
You sent it to me, I sent it to him.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right. God bless.
God bless.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Make sure to subscribe and give us a like on iTunes and Spotify so that you will never miss a show. And while you're at it, check out our Facebook and Instagram pages and make sure you tell your friends about this show. You don't want them to miss out on the truth because we are all about the truth here. Thanks for joining us this week, and God bless.